Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Well, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp.
Yes, it is. It is time for hemp. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Casper Leach. Please note that anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, we ask you to hit your pipes, your bongs, your vaporizers, and take time for hemp. And we are focused on this wonderful plant. This plant, as Jack Hare once said, if it can't save the world, it's the only one that can come close to saving the world. And it's got all kinds of wonderful features to it, especially medical. And that is today's topic, medical cannabis. And speaking of medical cannabis, my joint host here in the United States, Al Byrne, is a medical cannabis expert. He helped start Patients at a Time, put together a handful of amazing medical symposiums, and has been letting the whole world know how important it is to take time for hemp. Al Byrne, thank you for joining the big joint broadcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Of course, I didn't have much choice being the co-host, but hey,
joint host.
Yeah, joint host. I keep blowing that. I'm sorry. Yeah, I wrote a book. There it is, for Country and Cannabis. It's a real book. It's about 360 pages long, and it's full of stuff that you probably don't know about cannabis and how we got here in the United States and Canada and across the world, how we did it and who did it and how long it took, and all the good guys and the bad guys that we ran into along the way. And I think that if you're a medical professional, you're a patient, you care about a patient, you should read this book. I'm not going to make any real money off it, but what I wrote it for was to educate. That's been my goal since I started this process in 1983. And along the way, I met another Al. He's up there in Ontario, Canada, and his name is Al Graham, and I'd like to welcome him.
G'day, hey, how you doing?
Thank you for joining us. It's nice to have you as a joint host.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to be a joint host, and I really look forward to today's interview.
And you showed the Time for Hemp broadcast up there in Canada on the Pace Radio Network. Ain't that right?
Yes, it is. Friday mornings at 10 o'clock. The Time for Hemp broadcast airs on the Pace Radio Network, or Pace Network. And PACE stands for People Advocating Cannabis Education, and we touch on psychedelics as well.
Groovy, baby. So I take it we've got a joint guest today that's going to have a joint chat with us.
Yes, we do. We have a guest today who is a I'm just going to talk about the fact that he is a retired colonel from the Army. He's been retired for about 25 years. He's been a combat physician, as well as he has consulted and lectured people about the endocannabinoid system, as well as he has developed a product that we are going to discuss today. And so we'd like to welcome Colonel Philip Blair to the broadcast.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Welcome.
And thank you for taking time for hemp.
Okay, I'm going to move us around, and there we go. All right, Colonel. Usually we like to start the show by finding out a little bit of information on our guests and give us a bit of an idea how you got involved in the cannabis community, and obviously as a retired colonel, fill us in on your military background as well.
Yeah, a real pleasure. Well, at 17, I joined the United States Military Academy. in 1968. I graduated in 1972. I spent 2 years in the artillery learning how to kill people.
Wow.
And then I graduated to medical school at University of Miami, where I changed my ways. And I did residency in family medicine for 3 years in Augusta, Georgia. And from there, I did rotations around the country. I've had 17 different assignments throughout the world, including Italy, Germany, Hawaii, Saudi Arabia, different locations. And I ended up in Kansas, going back home. From there, during that time, I did do a stint at the first Gulf War as a DISCOM surgeon. And I was in manager of about 6 or 8 medical companies during the warfare. And we did the 3rd Armored Division, which did the end around, the Hail Mary approach into Iraq and Kuwait. And we stayed there about 6 months. And I got a taste of the oil wells burning as well.
Oh.
From there, I became the director of primary care and emergency medicine at Fort Riley, Kansas. And I retired and came to Longview, Washington. And I spent some time in occupational medicine, but then I retired very directly. And I took on different positions as locum tenens for filling in for doctors who were out of country in Newfoundland and Alaska. And then I joined a company that was doing disease management in kidney disease. I spent about 10 years with them. From there, I discovered and I developed my own disease management program with 4 dietitians. And we were deploying different types of dietary approaches using a low carbohydrate approach. And we were having terrific results. But I was introduced to cannabis at that time with a CBD company called Elixinol. And from there, I signed on with them and started counseling people about the use of cannabidiol or CBD. And for the next 6 years, I stayed steady with them, learning all the science that I could, lecturing, talking, exploring all the benefits of a full spectrum cannabis as well as CBD. And during that time, I learned about another compound that is also found in cannabis, a terpene that is also a phytocannabinoid called beta-caryophyllene, or I abbreviate it BCP. And from there, I developed my own product. I had it manufactured, and I've been producing that for the last 4 years from my company. And I've seen enormous benefits of this, and it mirrors most of the benefits of cannabis very specifically. So that's just to give you a detail of what I've been through.
Wow.
I want to jump in here with a question. Soldier to soldier, comrade, and friend to friend. You've had a path where you have seen an enormous amount of grief and enormous amount of injury and complications to the human body that have had to have wrenching effects on your psychic and your spirit and your soul that probably put you into a more compassionate spirit and a more compassionate path. How have you managed to walk through your path and still bounce with a happy smile on your face today, all that you've struggled with? I mean, you have dealt with quite a heavy burden, and I recognize that. And I'm certain it's not been easy, the path you've walked.
Well, I've relied on hemp and hemp products for most of my benefits. And I've always been driven by helping people, very specifically, trying to help people, veterans and all people in whatever disease. And being a family practitioner, I've delivered babies. In fact, I delivered my own 2 children, as a matter of fact. But in addition, I've always been out there trying to help people and help overcome these chronic illnesses. And that's where I entered the dietary regimen, because I found that was the most effective way to mitigate against many of these problems. And then I got into the veterans, and I was working with the veterans and trying to get them to overcome the post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries as well. And when I discovered cannabis, I was blown away by the denial that we've had for almost a century about the benefits of cannabis for individuals and their mental health. In fact, I actually wrote a book, Medicinal Cannabis in Mental Health Care and CBD, and to aspire to these particular benefits for the mental health of everybody who can use this product. And so I am completely endorse hemp. I completely endorse the products that are being derived from it. And I think the focus is on the endocannabinoid system, the system that permeates our bodies, but is denied by the general medical care.
Well, I salute you for all you being able to go into all those battles and walking into all that grief and tragedy with the attitude that you're going to make it better and not be afraid of it, not turn away and run from it. So thank you for all that you've done and the service you've given. And now I'm bipolar. You talked about how this helps with your mental stabilities. I find that when I smoke cannabis, I'm not too happy, and I'm not too sad. I'm like right in the middle. Do you find that to be true with other people that you work with?
Oh, yes. In fact, I've been exploring different products, and particularly BCP has shown marvelous potential for anxiety, depression, and bipolar, that it could mitigate against many of the ups and downs of that problem, whereas it avoids the highs that are necessarily, or the adverse effects from the medications that are commonly used. So it's got a huge benefit profile. And I think it would be fabulous to try that out for you and find out if it tempered your effects.
Colonel, where are you physically located right now?
I'm in Castle Rock, Washington.
Wow.
It's about 120 miles south of Seattle.
And is that where your firm is located as well?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to stay with the veteran thing for a minute. Post-traumatic stress disorder. I've had a long-term problem with that word disorder. I once worked as a combat counselor for the VA in the Agent Orange program, and I asked medical doctors, registered nurses, etc., that I would give in-service. I'm sure you're aware of that term. I would give in-service at different locations, and I would ask them to drop the disorder. Sir, am I wrong that you can be, in a medical terminology, that you can be born with a disorder? Is that correct?
Well, you can be born with a number of biochemical and genetic problems that lead to different syndromes or collections of different symptoms that can form a syndrome that has different specific derogatory symptoms. And from early childhood, we know that PTS, as you're calling it, and I completely endorse that name. I just use the standard term that I hear mostly from the medical community as PTSD, but PTS is certainly acceptable. And what we find is that PTS is a common denominator of childhood illnesses. And that when children are abused or neglected or suffer innumerable consequences, or they may have traumatic injuries, that they can be faced with traumatic changes in their endocannabinoid system that lead to their propensity to develop PTS symptoms as an adult. In fact, most of the people who actually do develop chronic PTS symptoms as an adult have a disorder of childhood called an ACE, advanced adverse childhood events in childhood that can lead to the preparation of the body for this derogatory events that later happen in life.
You know, I'm glad you said that, because when I was working as a counselor, of course, I worked with a lot of other counselors and all kinds of combat guys. And when we worked as counselors, individual, and then the counselors would get together once a week and we'd shoot the breeze about what was going on, we found that some 60% of the veterans that we were working with had exactly what you were talking about. They admitted to having some sort of trauma even before they got in the military. And that's when I came up with, as you've used that word, syndrome, to describe it. So are you're complimenting my comment here, that you're saying that a lot of folks, not just military folks, but those that have had trauma and experience and are into post-traumatic stress are in that category. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's many thousands of people who are in that category. They just may not show it. You know, the rates of PTS are different for different people, and people can go into it and go out of it at different times. Particularly women. Women are the major portion of PTS. It's not the military, it's women who have suffered the greatest consequences of PTS. Now, there's about a high rates of PTS in women during their lifetime, up towards about 15%. But it's not really well recognized for their abuses, the abuses that they go through and the trauma that they go through and their manifestation. In fact, there's a symptom complex called complex PTS, very specifically, that deals with the chronic nature of this problem, particularly in women, but it can occur in men as well.
And the 15% are sexual, control, getting beat up,
from all causes.
Everything.
All causes.
Trauma.
Just trauma in general. Oh wow, I didn't know that. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, let's go to the endocannabinoid system. I first heard those words in 1988 from a researcher at the University of Indiana, and her name escapes me right now, but I didn't know what she was talking about. I was setting up these academic conferences, and I was put on with her, and she came in and she announced this endocannabinoid system, which I understand, if I'm correct, is not only in all humans, it's virtually in all living creatures except insects. And I also think that the endocannabinoid system, again, please correct me if I'm wrong, is the defining system of life. In other words, it controls my body, it controls my immune system, my nervous system, et cetera, et cetera. Is that all correct?
Well, to some degree. Now, it's the endocannabinoid system was actually identified in hyphae, the hydra, the small animal. And then from there, it's progressed in different animals. All animals have it, except for insects. You're right. But that progression has been multifold, and it encompasses a great deal of systems. And those systems have gotten very involved in animals and humans. Essentially, animals have the same endocannabinoid system as we do, but ours is much more elaborate with additional receptor systems that are involved. Now, the endocannabinoid system was actually, I believe it was established in the early 1990s because they identified the CB1 receptor and the CB2 receptor in 1993. And they also identified some of the other cannabinoid substances, endocannabinoid substances that permeate the body. And so and from there, we've blossomed with a great deal of literature, but it's still under impressive in terms of the approach that we've had for it. Essentially, what the endocannabinoid system is a master regulator of other systems. I term it the 12th body system, where you've got the GI, the neurologic, the musculoskeletal, the immunologic system, and all these systems are interacting. And the endocannabinoid system appears to be that master controller and regulator of all these systems. It's not the only controller, but it is a master controller in that anytime, and one of the terms that has been called is a homeostatic system. And that's actually been one of the terms that's been used because that maintains a normal level, a normal functioning level. Now, when we get into a huge disease states, we may have that system rise up and get impaired. Or if we are deficient in many ways, it may go down to a low level and we get impairments in that way. So there's controls and regulators. There's a number of receptors But what it amounts to in the endocannabinoid system is a number of molecules like AEA and 2AG are the most common agonists that occur with the endocannabinoid system. And then there's a number of receptors that are involved. There's a CB1 receptor and the CB2 receptor. And there's a couple others that are tangentially involved and they haven't been declared as definite receptors. But there's a host of other enzymes that produce the endocannabinoids and those that degrade the endocannabinoids, and they're involved. And then there are transport molecules that are connected. Plus, there's all kinds of signaling molecules that connect up to interface with these endocannabinoid substances. Now, among the endocannabinoid substances, there are the AEA and 2AG, but there are also a number of endocannabinoid substances that are not these types of molecules, that don't connect with these receptors, but are still very deeply involved with the endocannabinoid system. For instance, palmitoyl ethanolamide, that's usually abbreviated PEA, and oleol ethanolamide. And these are incredible substances that have huge value, and they're found in our natural foods, actually. And so you can incorporate these into your products, and they have major benefits on the endocannabinoid system as well.
So what is THC? What does cannabis do for it? Well, how important is cannabis to the system?
Well, the cannabis offers you a number of different phytocannabinoid substances that can mirror the effects of the endocannabinoid substances. And so when you get that mirroring, you can get the benefits of targeting those endocannabinoid receptors and those linkages and those the molecules that are incorporated into the endocannabinoid system. What I mean is that when you use THC or CBD, actually CBD, you actually upregulate the endocannabinoid system so that it blocks the degradation pathway. And so that increases the levels of the natural endocannabinoids. So there's a great deal of interaction. Now,
now for the layperson, though, who's listening, how does that affect the overall body, and what does that do for your ability to fight disease?
Well, there's a number of different ways. So first of all, there's probably the most prominent one is the anti-inflammatory, the immunologic phase. So it's helping you control the inflammation and the antioxidant effects from when we produce a lot of adverse chemicals. We produce oxidation, and those damage the molecules, and the cannabinoids actually block that effect, and they restore a balance to the body through the immunologic and the immunologic system. And so by balancing that, then they will correct it. There's also neurotransmitter effects where it's blocking the results of depression, anxiety, and neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's. Plus, it has metabolic effects very specifically that incorporate into the mitochondria and to the other portions of the body that balance out the body. Now, everybody's an individual and nobody has a specific pattern. Everybody's got their own specific pattern as to what really gets them the greatest benefits. And so you have to, I wish we knew exactly what those patterns were in order to figure out what the phytocannabinoids and other substances need to be used in order to rectify those problems, but we don't. And so it amounts to trial and error to find out what works for each individual.
Again, for the audience, these receptors, CB1 and CB2 that the Colonel's talking about, CB1 receptors are basically in your head, in your brain, and CB2 are basically everywhere else. Now, the interesting thing about cannabis is because we have, as the Colonel says, we create our own endocannabinoids. Those endocannabinoids cross the brain's blood barrier. And that's why the cannabis can be effective in your brain, because other things are not available to your brain, and cannabis is. Am I correct again, sir?
Yes, you are. You're exactly right. That the penetration to the blood-brain barrier and the improvement in the barrier function of the blood-brain barrier is enhanced with the cannabinoids as well.
Oh, I never heard that. What does that mean?
Well, that means that when we get inflammation or trauma to the brain, we get a leaky brain. In fact, a leaky gut is a close relative of the leaky brain. And when that leaky brain gets open, there's a separate circulation for the brain and around the nerve tissues and the immunologic cells around the nerves. And when that barrier is broken up because of trauma, then it has a leak that lets these inflammatory particles that may be in the bloodstream into the brain, and it exacerbates and makes it worse, the inflammation in the brain, and it can lead to other trauma. It can also lead to swelling in the brain at the same time, whereas all the cannabinoids actually stop that particular process, and they reinforce the impermeability of the blood-brain barrier to prevent these other chemicals and inflammatory molecules from getting into the brain and the eye as well.
Wow.
Well, I need to jump in here.
Yeah.
We're getting down to the end of the first half hour, and the audience who's paying attention to this great broadcast today, do note that this is going to be a 2-part interview, because Colonel Blair has quite more to share. That almost rhymes, en contraire. And he's put together a wonderful product that will be of benefit for you to learn about. A quick mention about your product, Colonel.
Yeah, it's called beta-caryophyllene. It's actually a terpene phytocannabinoid. So I call it a phytocannabinoid because it is found in cannabis, but it's also found in a couple dozen other types of plants like cloves and black pepper. But it has signaling properties on the CB2 receptor and other cannabinoid receptors as well. But it doesn't have any effect on the CB1 receptor. So it cannot make you high, but it can make you anti-inflamed. It can have a lot of other benefits that go along with it. So
Yeah.
now
We're gonna have to discuss this fully in the next episode. I can just tell.
Yeah, and let's wrap this up now. And Al Graham, why don't you give us a little shout out for PACE?
Yeah, people advocating cannabis education. You can find us at paceradio.net. We have new programming or broadcasts 7 days a week.
And Al Burr, remind people of your fantastic book.
Yep, I have a fantastic book. Yep. But listen, what you want to guys do is to come back and listen to the Colonel here in the next half hour, and we're going to talk very specifically about his product. And I mean, just what he said right now, I got 3 questions. So stay in this.
All right. And I do, again, want to thank you, Colonel, for being part of our big broadcast, and ask all of you out there who are listening and watching to please share us with your friends. Check out timeforhemp.news. You get all kinds of free downloads, lots of great music, all about letting the whole world know how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money. Yeah, the money that they've spent. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, 'cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Well, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, it's time for hemp. Throughout us history, hemp has been used, no mystery. Hemp was legal to pay your taxes for more than a century. Check your faxes. The founding fathers made sense to me. It's time to grow hemp legally. Think of all its uses. It's money that's well spent right now. No excuses, it's time for hemp. Sustainable green industry, that's our intent. A better place this world will be. It's time for hemp. Fueling food and clothes and soap. Housing cars, yeah, cars, no joke. Henry Ford built a car of hemp. It's time for us to do it again. People be employed with balanced farming as it's meant right now. It's time for hemp. Hemp is a true necessity for the wealth and protection of this country. Thomas Jefferson spoke those words. He knew the value of these herds. It's time to lift the hemp ban. It's time to make a strong stand. Yes, we can. I know we can. We can make a difference. Yes, we can. Just like birds of a feather. Yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and take some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for him.